What's up, guys? The Snowman here. Another tennis preview today as the Swan Song Major of the 2023 season is upon us. It's my 2023 US Open men's draw preview. Please check out my women's draw preview if you're interested. Give me a thumbs up if you're a fan of the tennis coverage, but a multitude of storylines to dissect on the men's draw. We're going to take a look at it quarter by quarter and analyze all the matchups and the odds. And this is what the top quarter looks like. Carlos Alcaraz, our world number one seed and defending US Open champion. He's the youngest number one seed in US Open history, coming off that grueling Cincinnati final versus Djokovic. More on that in a bit, but if you look at the title odds for this tournament, it's very interesting. Alcaraz and Djokovic basically dead even for the best odds, and then there's a precipitous drop-off until you get to Medvedev, another gap until you see Jannik Sinner, and then the rest of the field. Really, those are your four key favorites, and that's the first thing I checked when the draw came out. What half is Medvedev on? What section is Sinner in? Because that affects the rest of the event in major ways, and it's the worst possible news for Alcaraz fans. Here we see number 6, Jannik Sinner, in his section. That would be a quarterfinal matchup. He also has Medvedev on the same half. That would be in the semis. So big disadvantage for Alcaraz here. Huge advantage to Novak Djokovic. Alcaraz has had a phenomenal season though. 53-6 on the year. 6 titles including his first Wimbledon crown. Overcoming Djokovic in that seismic final. Just 20 years old, but such a complete player in every facet. And as I said, this is not a friendly draw for the Spaniard. Koepfer in round 1. Maybe Cam Norrie in the round of 16. Not only Sinner down below, but the 12 seed Alexander Zverev has been in great form lately. He's essentially fully back from injury now. We've got a couple of former US Open champions in this quarter with Andy Murray and Stan Wawrinka. And at the bottom is the aforementioned number 6 Sinner, just a few weeks removed from the largest title of his career, the first Masters 1000 trophy to his credit in Toronto. Wasn't exactly a murderer's row of opponents, but we know how close he came to knocking off Alcaraz at the US Open last year, having those match points. I think we're all hoping for a rematch with Alcaraz and Sinner in these quarters. Their head-to-head sits at 3-3. I've broken down their matchup in depth before, but those are the heavyweights to watch out for in this section. Moving on to the second section of the men's draw, where the top 3 seeds are all Russians. One of those, the 3 seed Daniil Medvedev, has had a quieter summer on the hard courts than we've grown accustomed to, but he always seems to bring his A game to New York. 21-3 in his last 4 years at the US Open. Of course, Medvedev upending Djokovic's 2021 calendar year Grand Slam attempt and winning his first major then. He's the solid third favorite at this event. A manageable first couple rounds, but things could get tricky for Medvedev in round 3 against number 27 Borna Coric. We also see Kei Nishikori, a former US Open finalist, who returned to the Pro Tour last month after a 21-month injury absence. Someone Medvedev might not like to see in the 4th round would be number 13 Alex de Minaur, who just defeated the Russian in Toronto. In fact, de Minaur has won their last 2 encounters. He's a player that can match Medi for speed and defensive abilities, wants to play long rallies. Number 11 Karen Khachanov has had some great runs in New York over the years, semis last season. One last ride for John Isner, who announced this US Open would be the last event of his career. We'll see how long the big serving wildcard can last. More massive serving for Hubert Hurkacz and Matteo Berrettini towards the bottom. And Andrei Rublev, the 8 seed. I would think Medvedev would actually feel really comfortable if he plays his friend Rublev in the quarterfinals. He leads their head-to-head 5-2. Medvedev, a really solid favorite in quarter number 2 despite some interesting names. Section number 3 is likely the most open of the 4. At the bottom here, maybe a lesser-known 4 seed for the casual fan, Holger Rune, only 20 years of age like his contemporary Alcaraz, had to retire in Cincinnati last week with a back injury. Not sure if he's 100% heading into the US Open, but he's a dangerous contender with a lot of artillery at his disposal, has already built up a reputation as a sort of a big match player who plays best under the bright lights. Rune's main adversary in this section could be a Scandinavian rival at the top, number 5 Casper Ruud. Ruud making that run last year to the final in New York. He leads 5-1 in their head-to-head, but most of those matchups taking place while Rune was still a teenager. Ruud probably the slim favorite of this group in my opinion, but there's a ton of American firepower as well. Number 31 Korda, 10 seed Tiafoe, 14 Tommy Paul Paul's been on fire lately, had a huge win over Alcaraz recently. Who can forget Francis Tiafoe's epic run to the US Open semis last year, beating Rafael Nadal in the process. So those guys seem ready to take another giant step. Maybe one of the better first-round matchups, 25 seed Alexander Bublik against 2020 U.S. Open champion Dominic Thiem. It's been a miserable season for Thiem, but he showed signs of life in Kitzbühel, making the final there. I'm hoping to see some magic from Thiem this section, definitely the one with the most opportunity. Fourth and final section, and that's where we find the world number 2 at the very bottom. 23-time major champion Novak Djokovic, that number 2 ranking almost certain to change after the U.S. Open. Essentially all Novak has to do is win his first round match against Alexander Muller, and he'll leap back over Alcaraz for the top spot. A large part of that is thanks to Djokovic's epic 3-hour and 49-minute triumph over Carlos in the Cincy final last week. The longest 3-set final in ATP Tour history. Match points saved on both sides. It was a true test of wills with grinding rallies during the heat of the day and then evening. What that match in Cincinnati really illustrated is that the men's tennis world right now, it's Djokovic, it's Alcaraz, and then it's everybody else. I mean, these two guys are completely in their own stratosphere, their own class. Like I said before, maybe Medvedev or Sinner can win this U.S. Open, but it would be totally shocking if Djokovic or Alcaraz wasn't lifting the trophy. I don't see anyone in the first 4 rounds that can stop Djokovic. 15 seed Felix Auger-Aliassime has taken an enormous leap back this year, just 14-14, something like 3-9 in his last 12 matches. It's been difficult to watch the Canadian this season. Number 9, Taylor Fritz, has an outside shot. He would play Novak in the quarterfinals. We also have the American number 28, who was the talk of the grass court season, Christopher Eubanks, and a popcorn first round matchup, Stefanos Tsitsipas versus Milos Raonic. Clash of different eras. Raonic has won both of their previous matches back in 2020. He's still making his way back to full fitness. We know Steph doesn't have the best record in New York. His worst major, just 5 wins all time, never been beyond the 3rd round. So because of all these things, you have to give a massive edge to Djokovic. Before the draw, I would have said Alcaraz is the slimmest of favorites to win the whole thing, but after seeing Sinner and Medvedev get put on his half of the draw while Djokovic is left with Tsitsipas, Rune, and Ruud, it seems more likely that Novak conquers the field and brings home Grand Slam number 24. Thanks a lot for watching my men's draw preview. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about my analysis, who you've got winning the U.S. Open this year. Also, please take a look at my women's preview if you want as well. And yeah, subscribe to the Snowman Sports Media for more tennis content. Cheers.